When Blazing Saddles was released in 1974, few people expected it to become one of the most famous comedy films in Hollywood history. Today, it is remembered as a bold, fearless movie that made audiences laugh, while also forcing them to think about racism, power, and society. But what many fans did not realize is that the road to bringing this film to the screen was filled with problems, arguments, risks, and surprising decisions that could have stopped the movie before it even began filming. Behind the laughter was a chaotic production filled with tension between creative vision and studio fear. Mel Brooks, already known for his sharp humor, wanted to create something that would push boundaries further than ever before. He did not want to make a safe Western parody. He wanted to challenge the old Hollywood Western image and expose how silly and harmful some of its stereotypes were. However, executives at Warner Brothers were extremely nervous. In the early 1970s, studios were cautious about films that dealt directly with race using strong language and satire. Brooks insisted that the humor had a purpose. He believed that by making racism look foolish, he could weaken its power. The studio feared backlash, protests, and financial loss. The tension between Brooks and the executives began long before cameras started rolling. Meetings were filled with debates about which jokes could stay and which had to be removed. Brooks fought hard to protect his script. He knew that if the sharp edges were softened, the movie would lose its impact. This was not just another comedy for him. It was a statement about society wrapped inside outrageous humor. The film's idea was simple but risky. A black sheriff arrives in a small, racist Western town and turns a traditional cowboy story upside down. At that time, no major studio comedy had handled race in such a direct way. Brooks believed audiences were smarter than the studio executives thought. He trusted that viewers would understand the satire. That trust became one of the most important factors in the film's success. But before success came fear. The studio questioned everything from casting to marketing. Would audiences accept such bold humor? Would critics attack it? Would it damage the studio's reputation? These questions created pressure on everyone involved. Yet Brooks stayed calm and confident. He understood that controversy can sometimes help a film rather than hurt it. His confidence would soon be tested again during casting decisions that shocked Hollywood insiders. The early days of production showed just how close Blazing Saddles came to being changed beyond recognition, or possibly canceled altogether. It is almost hard to imagine today that a movie now seen as a comedy classic once stood on such uncertain ground. But without that struggle, the film might not have become the daring masterpiece audiences still celebrate nearly 50 years later. One of the biggest turning points in the making of Blazing Saddles came during casting, and the decisions made at this stage would shape the film forever. When Mel Brooks and his writing team were developing the script, there was one person Brooks strongly wanted for the lead role of Sheriff Bart: Richard Pryor. Pryor was not just a comedian. He was one of the most fearless and honest voices in comedy at the time. His stand-up routine spoke openly about race, politics, and real-life struggles. He was also one of the writers helping shape the script. Brooks believed Pryor's energy, intelligence, and bold personality would bring something powerful to the role. The character of Sheriff Bart was not meant to be simple or one-dimensional. He needed to be sharp, calm under pressure, and able to outsmart an entire town filled with ignorance. Brooks saw those qualities in Pryor. However, the executives at Warner Brothers were worried. At that time, Pryor had a reputation for very strong language in his comedy routines. He was known for pushing limits on stage. Studio leaders feared that his public image would make the film too risky. There were also concerns about his past struggles with drug use. In the eyes of the studio, hiring Pryor as a lead in such a controversial movie felt like adding fuel to a fire that was already burning. Brooks argued passionately in Pryor's favor, but in the end, the studio refused to approve him for the lead role. This was a major disappointment. For a moment, it seemed like the entire project might collapse because Brooks felt so strongly about this decision. Instead, the role went to Cleveland Little, a talented stage actor who was not yet a big Hollywood name. Little auditioned and impressed everyone with his calm confidence and sharp timing. His performance was different from what Pryor might have delivered, but it was equally powerful in its own way. Little brought a steady, intelligent charm to Sheriff Bart. He did not overplay the comedy. Instead, he reacted seriously to the ridiculous behavior around him, which made the humor even stronger. In many ways, the studio's decision accidentally created something special. Lil's controlled and thoughtful performance helped balance the wild energy of the rest of the film. He made the character believable, even in the middle of outrageous jokes. Looking back, many fans now believe Lil was perfect for the role. What once felt like a setback became one of the movie's greatest strengths. The casting drama did not stop there. The role of the Waco Kid also went through unexpected changes. At one point, the legendary Western star John Wayne was offered the role. Wayne represented the classic American cowboy image. His presence in a Western parody would have been both shocking and symbolic. However, Wayne read the script and felt that the humor was too bold and offensive for his personal taste. Even though he reportedly told Brooks he thought the script was funny, he said he could not appear in a film like that. The role then went to actor Gig Young, but that decision also failed. Young struggled with alcohol problems during filming and was eventually replaced. In a last-minute move, Brooks called Gene Wilder, who had previously worked with him, on the producers. Wilder agreed to join the film under one condition, that he be allowed to film another project first. Brooks agreed, and this decision turned out to be magical. Wilder's performance as the Waco Kid became one of the most beloved parts of the movie. His quiet delivery and dry humor perfectly matched Cleveland Lil's style. Together, they created a partnership that felt natural and unforgettable. These casting battles show how fragile the making of Blazing Saddles truly was. At several points, different decisions could have completely changed the film's tone and legacy. What started as conflict and disappointment slowly turned into unexpected success. Sometimes the choices that seem wrong in the moment become the very reason the movie becomes timeless. While the casting battles were dramatic, the biggest struggles during the making of Blazing Saddles happened behind closed doors in studio offices. From the very beginning, Mel Brooks knew he was walking into dangerous territory. The script did not simply joke about the Old West. It directly attacked racism, mock political power, and used shocking language to expose ignorance. In the early 1970s, this kind of humor made studio executives extremely nervous. The leaders at Warner Brothers worried that audiences would misunderstand the satire. They feared angry protests, bad press, and financial failure. For them, comedy was supposed to be light and harmless. Brooks, however, believed comedy could be powerful and even educational. He argued that the film was not promoting racism, but making fun of it. By showing racist characters as foolish and ridiculous, he believed the film would weaken hateful ideas rather than strengthen them. But convincing studio executives was not easy. Meetings often turned into tense debates. Executives asked Brooks to remove certain words and soften certain scenes. Brooks refused many of these requests. He explained that if the harsh language were removed, the satire would lose its impact. The humor worked precisely because it showed how absurd racism truly was. If it became too polite, the message would disappear. At times, the arguments became so intense that some people involved feared the film might be canceled altogether. One of the most controversial parts of the movie was its bold and unexpected ending. Traditional Western films usually end with a serious showdown, where the hero defeats the villain in a dramatic final battle. Brooks decided to completely destroy that expectation. Instead of a normal ending, the movie explodes into chaos. Characters break through walls, run across different movie sets, and even invade other film productions happening on the studio lot. The story stops pretending to be a Western and openly becomes a movie about making a movie. This was known as breaking the fourth wall, and it was very unusual at the time. Studio executives were confused and worried. They asked Brooks why he wanted to destroy the illusion of the film just as the story reached its climax. Brooks believed that this wild ending was a perfect way to show how silly and artificial old Western movies really were. By turning the final fight into a giant pie fight that spills into the real world, he was showing audiences that movies are not sacred objects. They are creations meant to entertain and challenge ideas. The studio thought audiences might feel cheated or confused. Brooks believed audiences would laugh at the boldness of it. There were also concerns about the marketing of the film. How do you advertise a movie that is both outrageous and socially critical? The studio's marketing team struggled to describe it. Was it a Western? Was it satire? Was it political? Brooks pushed for posters and trailers that focus on the comedy rather than the controversy. He knew that once audiences saw the film and understood the joke, they would appreciate it. Still, until the movie was released, no one knew how it would be received. The fear of failure hung over the entire production. When Blazing Saddles finally premiered in 1974, the response surprised many executives. Instead of protest and disaster, the film became a huge box office success. Audiences understood the humor. They laughed loudly, and many critics praised its courage. What the studio once feared became one of its biggest hits. The risky ending, the bold language, and the fearless satire all became reasons the movie stood out from other comedies. Looking back, the tension between Brooks and the studio may have helped the film. The constant challenges forced Brooks to defend every joke and strengthen his vision. In the end, those fights helped create a comedy classic that still feels daring decades later. Another important fact that many people did not know at the time was how nervous the studio executives were about releasing Blazing Saddles. Today, the film is often listed among the greatest comedies ever made. But in 1974, it was seen as a huge risk. The movie was produced and distributed by Warner Brothers, and some executives were worried that the jokes were too bold, too controversial, and too different from other films of that time. Western movies were usually serious stories about brave cowboys, dangerous outlaws, and life on the American frontier. But this film turned the whole genre upside down. Instead of honoring the old traditions, it made fun of them. It laughed at the typical cowboy hero. It mocked the villains. And it even broke the fourth wall by reminding the audience that they were watching a movie. For studio leaders who were used to safe and traditional storytelling, this was shocking. There were meetings where executives discussed whether certain scenes should be cut. They were afraid of public anger, protests, or even bans in some theaters. Some people inside the company believed the film might completely fail and damage the studio's reputation. What they did not fully understand at the time was that audiences were ready for something fresh and daring. The early 1970s were a time of change in America. Social rules were being questioned, and comedy was becoming more bold. The film's fearless style matched the mood of the era. Still, before release, there was real fear behind the scenes. Marketing teams had to carefully plan how to present the movie. They could not advertise it like a normal Western. Instead, they focused on the comedy and the outrageous humor. Even after its release, some theaters were unsure how audiences would react. But when people started laughing loudly in cinemas, word of mouth spread quickly. The very things that scared the studio became the reason for the movie's success. Its boldness made it stand out. Its willingness to say what other films would not say made it feel exciting. In the end, the risk paid off. The movie became a box office hit and proved that taking creative chances can sometimes lead to great rewards. Another hidden story involves a creative partnership between Mel Brooks and actor Gene Wilder. Wilder played the character Jim, also known as the Waco Kid, and his calm, dry performance balanced the wild energy of the rest of the cast. But many people do not know that Wilder only agreed to join the project on one condition. He wanted Brooks to promise that his next film would be a different kind of comedy, something inspired by classic horror movies. Brooks agreed to this request, and that promise later led to the creation of Young Frankenstein, which became another legendary comedy. This agreement shows how much trust and respect existed between Brooks and Wilder. Their collaboration was not just about one movie. It was about building something larger together. During filming, Wilder was known for taking his craft very seriously. While much of the movie was loud and over the top, his character was played in a more controlled and thoughtful way. This contrast made the humor even stronger. When Wilder delivered a quiet line in the middle of chaos, it often became one of the funniest moments in the film. Behind the scenes, Brooks gave his actors a lot of freedom to improvise. He believed that comedy works best when performers feel relaxed and creative. Many jokes in the final cut were not fully written in the original script. Actors added small touches, funny expressions, or unexpected lines that made scenes even better. This creative freedom created a fun and energetic atmosphere on set. At the same time, it required strong leadership from Brooks to keep everything organized. Making a comedy that looks wild on screen actually requires careful planning. Timing, camera angles, and editing are all very important. One small mistake can ruin a joke. The teamwork between Brooks, Wilder, and the rest of the cast helped the movie achieve perfect comic timing. Their work together on this film also built friendships that lasted for many years. What started as a risky Western parody became the beginning of one of the most successful comedy partnerships in Hollywood history. The most surprising facts about the making of this film involves actor Cleveland Little, who played Sheriff Bart. At the time, it was very rare to see a black actor in the lead role of a major Hollywood Western comedy. Western films had traditionally shown black characters in small or stereotypical roles, if they appeared at all. Casting Little as the smart, confident, and calm hero was a bold decision. Some studio executives were unsure about how audiences in certain parts of America would react. There were fears that the film might face backlash or even boycotts. However, Little's performance became one of the strongest parts of the movie. He brought intelligence, charm, and dignity to the role. While many characters around him acted foolish or prejudiced, Sheriff Bart remained clever and in control. This contrast made the satire even stronger. Instead of making him the joke, the film made racism itself the joke. Behind the scenes, Little was known for his professionalism and positive attitude. Even when scenes included offensive language, he understood that the humor was meant to expose ignorance, not support it. This required trust between the cast and director. The filmmakers had to carefully balance comedy with a serious message. If the tone had been wrong, the film could have seemed cruel instead of clever. Little's performance helped maintain that balance. His calm reactions to ridiculous situations made many scenes unforgettable. Over time, audiences began to see that the film was not attacking any group unfairly. Instead, it was mocking hatred and narrow thinking. Little's role helped open doors for more diverse casting in comedy films. Although the producers may not have openly discussed how risky this casting choice felt at the time, it became one of the movie's greatest strengths. Today, many fans believe that without Cleveland Little's steady and intelligent performance, the film would not have worked nearly as well as it did. Another hidden challenge during production involved a famous and chaotic final sequence. In most Westerns, the ending usually features a serious showdown in the town's main street. But in Blazing Saddles, the ending completely breaks tradition. The fight scene grows larger and more ridiculous until it literally spills out of the Western set and into other parts of the studio. Characters crash through walls, run across sound stages, and even interrupt another movie being filmed. This kind of ending was very unusual at the time. It required careful planning. Even though it looks wild and uncontrolled on screen, the production team had to design multiple sets that could be safely destroyed. Stunt performers had to rehearse complex movements to avoid injury. Timing was extremely important because comedy often depends on perfect coordination. The scene also cost more money than many people expected. Large set pieces were damaged on purpose, which increased expenses. Some executives questioned whether such a strange ending was a good idea. They wondered if audiences would be confused or think the film had lost control. However, director Mel Brooks believed that the surprise was exactly what made it funny. By breaking the rules of storytelling, the movie reminded viewers that it was all a joke. It invited them to laugh not only at the characters, but also at Hollywood itself. This bold creative choice became one of the most talked about parts of the film. Many later comedies copied the idea of breaking the fourth wall or mixing fictional worlds. At the time, though, it was a major gamble. The producers did not heavily advertise how unusual the ending would be, perhaps because they were unsure how it would be received. In the end, audiences loved the unexpected chaos. The scene helped the movie stand out from every other Western comedy ever made. It proved that sometimes ignoring tradition can create something truly unforgettable. Another important detail that many viewers did not fully understand at the time was how much of the film's sharp humor came from its talented writing team. The screenplay for Blazing Saddles was not written by just one person. It was a team effort that included director Mel Brooks, along with writers such as Richard Pryor, Andrew Bergman, Norman Steinberg, and Alan Ugger. One of the most surprising facts is that Richard Pryor, who was already known for his bold and fearless stand-up comedy, played a major role in shaping the script. Although he did not appear in the film, his influence is strongly felt in many of the sharp and daring jokes. At the time, Pryor was famous for speaking openly about race and social issues, and his voice helped give the movie its strong satirical edge. Some reports say that the studio was nervous about hiring Pryor as a writer because of his controversial public image. There were even early talks about casting him in the lead role, but concerns about insurance and studio approval prevented that from happening. Even so, his contribution to the screenplay was very important. The writing team worked closely together, often sitting in a room and building jokes line by line. They tested different versions of scenes, trying to find the funniest and most meaningful approach. This process required trust and honesty. Writers had to be open to criticism and willing to rewrite jokes many times. The humor in the film may feel effortless, but it was carefully crafted. Many lines were rewritten again and again to achieve the perfect balance between funny and shocking. The producers did not always share how much teamwork went into the script. From the outside, audiences might have assumed that one person was responsible for the entire vision. In reality, it was a creative group effort. This collaboration allowed the film to explore serious themes while still making people laugh. The mix of different comedic voices made the movie richer and more layered than a typical comedy of its time. Another hidden aspect of the film's success involves the unforgettable performance of Harvey Korman, who played the villainous character Hedley Lamar. Korman was already known for his work on television, especially on The Carol Burnett Show, where he showed strong comedic skills. However, his role in this Western parody allowed him to explore a different kind of humor. Hedley Lamar is not a typical Western villain. Instead of being truly frightening, he is arrogant, dramatic, and often ridiculous. His serious tone, combined with silly situations, creates strong comic contrast. Behind the scenes, Korman was said to struggle at times with keeping a straight face during filming. The script was full of outrageous jokes, and many scenes required actors to remain serious while delivering absurd lines. Maintaining that balance can be difficult for any performer. Director Mel Brooks reportedly encouraged improvisation, but he also expected discipline. Korman's ability to act with complete seriousness, even in the middle of chaos, made his character more memorable. Interestingly, the character's name itself became part of the joke, since it sounds similar to famous actress Hedley Lamar. This playful wordplay added another layer of humor that many viewers appreciated. The producers did not heavily promote these behind-the-scenes challenges, perhaps because they wanted the comedy to appear natural and effortless. In truth, creating such a performance required skill and concentration. Korman's exaggerated expression, confident voice, and dramatic style helped define the film's comedic tone. His character became one of the most quoted villains in comedy history. Without his strong performance, the film might not have achieved the same lasting popularity. His work reminds us that even in a movie filled with wild jokes and chaos, strong acting remains essential for success. Another fascinating detail that many people did not realize involved the music and how it added to the film's powerful message. The theme song of Blazing Saddles was performed by legendary singer Frankie Laine, who was famous for singing serious and dramatic Western-themed songs in the 1950s and 1960s. At first, Laine reportedly believed he was recording a traditional Western ballad. The song sounds heroic and emotional, just like the theme songs from classic cowboy films. However, once audiences watched the movie, they realized the song itself was part of the joke. The serious music played over funny and exaggerated scenes created a powerful contrast. This clever use of music showed how carefully the producers thought about every detail. Instead of using silly music, they chose a dramatic style to make the comedy even stronger. The producers did not openly reveal how intentional this choice was. Many viewers may have thought it was just a regular Western theme, but in reality, it was another example of satire. By using a respected singer known for real Western songs, the film made its parody feel even more complete. Music plays a strong emotional role in movies. It tells the audience how to feel. In this case, the serious tone of the theme song made the ridiculous events on screen even funnier. The mix of drama and comedy created a unique feeling that audiences had never experienced before. This creative decision helped the film stand out from other comedies of the time. It also showed that parody works best when it respects the original style while gently making fun of it. The song became closely linked with the film's identity, and over time, it became just as memorable as the jokes and characters. Another hidden element behind the film's success was its